Welcome to the History of the Internet with Lisa Browning and Katelyn Mclean. The true starting point of the Internet can vary based on just who you're asking. The prototype for the Internet as we know it today came into being in the United States more than 50 years ago during the Cold War to prevent Russian interference with American communications. Other pieces of this puzzle started to fall into place as well, such as the invention of ARPANET in 1969. So, when was the Internet created, really? January 1st, 1983 is considered the official birthday of the Internet. Before this, the various computer networks did not really have a standard way to communicate with each other. New communications protocol was established called Transfer Control Protocol Internetwork Protocol, or TCP/IP. So, who created the Internet? Well, Leonard Kleinrock was credited with the first concept of the Internet in his paper, Information Flow in Large Communication Nets, on May 31st, 1961. His work in this time frame, which included his PhD work at MIT, was to form the mathematical theory of packet-based networks. However, when it comes to just who invented the Internet, well, the answer that would have to be that not one person really invented the Internet. When networking technology was first developed, there were a number of scientists and engineers who brought their research together to create the ARPANET. ARPA awarded contracts in 1969 for the development of the ARPANET project, directed by Robert Taylor and managed by Lawrence Roberts. ARPANET adopted the packet switching technology proposed by Davies and Barron, underpinned by mathematical work in the early 1970s by Leonard Kleinrock at UCLA. The network was built by a team at Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, which included Bob Kahn. Later, other inventors' creations paved the way for the web that we all know and love today. Some of those scientists and engineers would include Paul Barron, Lawrence Roberts, Leonard Kleinrock, Donald Davies, Bob Kahn, and Vint Cerf. In 1973, software engineers Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn began to work on the next generation of networking standards for the ARPANET. These standards, known as TCP/IP, became the foundation of the modern Internet. ARPANET switched to using TCP/IP on January 1st, 1983. During the 1980s, funding for the Internet shifted from the military to the National Science Foundation. The NSF funded the long-distance networks that served as the Internet's backbone from 1981 until 1994. In 1994, the Clinton administration turned control over the Internet backbone to the private sector. It has been privately operated and funded ever since. Former Vice President Al Gore is frequently quoted as claiming credit for the invention of the Internet, but what he actually said in a 1999 CNN interview was, "I took the initiative in creating the Internet." Gore was widely mocked for this statement, but the men who did invent the Internet, TCP/IP designers Bob Kahn and Vint Cerf, wrote in Gore's defense in 2000. They argue that Gore was the first political leader to recognize the importance of the Internet and to promote and support its development. As far back as the 1970s, Congressman Gore promoted the idea of high-speed telecommunications, the pair wrote. As a senator in the 1980s, Gore urged government agencies to consolidate what, at the time, were several dozen different and unconnected networks into an intra-agency network. Gore sponsored the 1991 High Performance Computing and Communications Act, which Kahn and Cerf say became one of the major vehicles for the spread of the Internet beyond the field of computer science. So, why was the Internet created? The Internet started in the 1960s as a way for government researchers to share information. Due to the size of computers in the 1960s and the lack of mobility surrounding them, to actually access information on them, researchers had to travel from one site to another to do so, with the only other alternative being magnetic computer tapes sent through the conventional postal system. The beginning of the internet is rooted deep in the US 1950s. For example, this is when the Cold War was just at its height. There was tension between the US and the Soviet Union, and both parties used long airfield attacks. So the US decided that they needed a communication system that couldn't be affected by the Soviets' nuclear attacks. During this time, this is when the computers were, massive, and they were exclusively used for military, scientists, and university staff. But what was before the internet? Well, it starts with the telegraph. Samuel Morse sent the first message from an electrical telegraph in 1844 from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. His message, "What hath God wrought?" Coinciding with the rise of the railroad, the telegraph profoundly changed communications by making it easier and faster to send near instantaneous messages across long distances. In just 6 years, 12,000 miles of cable crisscrossed the United States, and by 1861, Western Union had finished work on the first telegraph line that reached the East Coast from the West. In 1929, at its apex, Western Union transmitted more than 200 million telegrams. And as the popularity of the telegram grew, Alexander Graham Bell was working on an even more direct form of communication, the telephone. He was granted a U.S. patent for the device in 1876. Once adopted, the telephone's popularity grew rapidly. In 1900, there were 600,000 telephones in the United States. By 1910, there were 5.8 million. In 1927, the same year as the first television transmission, the telephone officially went international. That year, the first commercial transatlantic telephone conversation happened between Evelyn Murray, secretary to the British General Post Office, and W.S. Gifford, president of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, AT&T, still a leading telecommunications company. Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi received a U.S. patent for radio technology in 1904, 3 years after he claimed to have sent the first transatlantic radio signal. Radio was the first technology that could instantaneously communicate to a mass audience, as it allowed continuous, up-to-date news and entertainment for people regardless of their income or literacy levels. It became immensely popular. In many parts of the world today, radio remains a dominant source of news and entertainment, and it's still considered to be one of the most important means of mass communication in Africa, where literacy rates are relatively low and electricity access is inconsistent. In 2010, an estimated 44,000 radio stations still operated around the globe. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. As the United States sought to catch up and the space race took off, scientific developments pioneered a wide range of uses for satellite technology. Since the launch of the first communication satellite in 1962, satellites have been an integral part of global communications. That year, the first transatlantic broadcast of live television entertained an audience of tens of millions. In North America, viewers saw, among other highlights, the Big Ben, the Louvre, and Sicilian fishermen at work. In Europe, viewers were treated to sights of an American baseball game, the Statue of Liberty, and a press conference by President John F. Kennedy. Today, more than 2,500 satellites orbit the Earth to track weather, monitor military movements, give users accurate directions through the Global Positioning System, or GPS, and more. A century after the telephone's invention, Motorola placed the world's first call from a cell phone to its rival AT&T, of course. And Motorola's cell phone looked nothing like the ones available today. It was big, it weighed almost 3 pounds, and could be used only for about 35 minutes. As a research prototype, it also wasn't publicly available. Motorola's first cell phone for sale, based on this prototype, cost up to $4,000 meaning cell phones were even more of a luxury item than they are today, when 96% of Americans own cell phones. And then, in 1989, British engineer and computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee pioneered the World Wide Web, which paved the way for today's internet communication. Access to the internet has gone up. In 2000, only 6.5% of people globally use the internet. As of 2018, around 51% do, thanks in part to technological advancements such as high-speed broadband and smartphones. The internet has given rise to new developments in communication too, including search engines and social media. The internet has become so integral to modern life that in 2016, the United Nations passed a resolution declaring access to the internet a human right. So, what are the phases of the internet? How did we get where we are today? Well, we have about 3 phases altogether. Web 1.0 was the very first version of the internet. Consider the read-only or syntactic web to be Web 1.0. The majority of participants were content consumers, whereas the creators were mostly web developers who produced websites with predominantly textual or visual content. Web 1.0 existed approximately between 1991 and 2004. In Web 1.0, sites supplied static content rather than the dynamic hypertext markup language, or HTML, content. The data and content came from a static file system rather than a database, and there was really limited interactivity on these web pages. We then moved on to Web 2.0. Most of us have really only ever seen Web 2.0, which is the web in its present form, which is the interactive read and write web and the social web. You don't have to be a developer to participate in the Web 2.0 creation process. Many applications are built in such a manner that anybody can create content. You may think and share your ideas with the rest of the world. In Web 2.0, you may also submit a video and make it accessible for millions of people to view, engage with, and comment on. Web 2.0 apps include YouTube, Facebook, Flickr, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and just about any other social media platform. Then we have Web 3.0, also known as semantic web, or read, write, execute, is the phase, starting in 2010, that suggests the future of the web. Artificial intelligence, or AI, and machine learning, ML, allow computers to evaluate data in the same manner that people do, allowing for the intelligent development and dissemination of useful information based on a user's individual requirements. Although there are several major differences between Web 2.0 and Web 3.0, decentralization is the defining parameter. Web 3.0 developers almost never design and deploy programs that operate on a single server or store data in a single database, usually hosted on and managed by a single cloud provider. Web 3.0 applications are based on blockchains, which are decentralized networks of many peer-to-peer nodes, or a combination of the two. These applications are known as decentralized apps, and the term is often used in the Web 3.0 ecosystem. Participants in the network are rewarded for providing the best quality services in order to maintain a robust and secure, decentralized network. The World Wide Web is a popular way to publish information on the internet. The web was created by Timothy Berners-Lee, a computer program at the European Scientific Research Organization CERN, in 1991. It offered a more powerful and user-friendly interface than other internet applications. The web supported hyperlinks, allowing users to browse from one document to another with just a single click. Over time, the web became increasingly sophisticated, supporting images, audio, video, and interactive content. In the mid-1990s, companies such as Yahoo and Amazon began building profitable businesses based on the web. In the 2000s, full-featured web-based applications such as Yahoo Maps and Google Docs were created. In 1994, Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web Consortium to be the web's official standards organization. He is still the W3C's director and continues to oversee the development of web standards. However, the web is an open platform, and the W3C can't compel anyone to adopt its recommendations. In practice, the organizations with the most influence over the web are Microsoft, Google, Apple, and Mozilla, the companies that produce the leading web browsers. Any technologies adopted by these four become de facto web standards. The web has become so popular that many people now regard it as synonymous with the internet itself. But technically, the web is just one of many internet applications. Other applications include email and BitTorrent. So, where are we today? Well, when it comes to the internet today, it's extremely different from the first version of the internet. It's come a long way in the way it works, it's used, and looks. Today, anyone and everyone can use and access the internet, unlike before. In today's world, you can go just about anywhere, and the internet's going to be there. For example, users can access the internet on their laptops in the middle of the woods, play on their phone in a cafe, or just take a hike and have access. Users can also utilize an almost endless list of services. It allows the user to communicate and collaborate worldwide and do several things that most people never really expected to be able to do today.